Best 5 field fighting marchers that will help you win the Mother Ball and will help you win the KVK. Let's get right into it. Hello everyone and welcome back to another Rise of Kingdom video. This is your boy Legend Ronnie, and today I want to talk about the best 5 open field marchers, especially if you care about winning the KVK, if you care about winning the Mother Ball. As you already seen Kingdom 1960 fighting in KVK, I've done like 4 or 5 live streams, maybe even more, about them fighting in KVK and how strong they were on the field fighting, always winning the Mother Ball, or about 85% of the times winning the Mother Ball, and using marchers that we call them squishy. It seems that it is very important to have certain amount of marchers and certain amount of damage in the Mother Ball in order to overwhelm your opponent. Now of course the way you play it also makes a difference, because if you're just charging in the enemy Mother Ball, it will not work. So expecting 1960 and seeing how they play, it also gave me some ideas what I want to do for the next KVK, some of the marches that I want to do for the next KVK. As you all know, for a very long time I stopped using YSG, even though you see 111 million kills. So definitely YSG is a killer. But I stopped using him in my Mother Balls because I was always in the situation when I was being overwhelmed, when they were crushing me. So in my situation I always had to go for tanky marchers. That's why in many of my videos you see me advising something like Attila and Nevsky, something like Artemisia and Boudica, something like Gilgamesh and Nebu, marchers that have a lot of defensive options, a lot of defensive capabilities, damages reduction, etc, etc. Because being overwhelmed every single time is not really funny. It also fills up your hospital, but if you really want to do something, you can. You just need very defensive marchers. So by the time they kill one of your march, you will have your other 4 marchers to do damage. So whichever march they pick, it will be a very defensive march. So this video is about the best 5, not about being tanking, being defensive. It's about the best 5. So if you're winning, your trades will be amazing. This is the point. If they swarm you, of course your trades will not be so great. A lot of marches that I haven't recommended or I haven't used in a while will be recommended in this video. So for example, since I was mentioning YSG, I'm gonna start with him. I have seen 1960 using a lot of Boudica YSG, which seems to be working really great, because I was inspecting the Mother Ball and I saw that they were winning the Mother Ball, and many of these squishy marches that they were using, such as Boudica and YSG, they were alive because they were having the damage, the AoE, the buffs, the debuffs in the Mother Ball to be able to crush their opponents. Like I said, 80-85% of the times when it was their downtime, it was the time when they were taking bad trades, because they were pretty much just sacrificing to hold on, to not lose the territory, because 1307 was pushing on them. So that was the time when they were always getting bad trades, or in situation when they were overwhelmed. In my situation, as I like to do 2 archer marches and I want to include YSG, I'm gonna go with a Nebu and YSG, which is something that again I haven't used in years, but I'm definitely gonna go for it. I'm gonna try it out. If I'm not gonna get results, because hey, Legend Ronnie on the field, everybody wants to swarm Legend Ronnie, and that's my story about it, but I will try to do that. I want to go with 5 super good marchers at the beginning and see how that, and one of them is going to be Nebu and YSG, because Nebu hits 5 targets, YSG hits 5 targets, and then you have 15% march speed. Now if you only want to do 1 archer march, then you can go with Boudica and YSG, but in my situation I will do 2 archer marches, and my second archer march is going to be Boudica first, and the second is going to be Artemisia. And this idea came from 1960 as well, because I was always thinking from a perspective of good trades, defensive, and I was always putting Artemisia first. For various reasons. You have the defense tree, and from the defense tree you get the double heal. So when I go into her talents, you see I have the medicinal supplies, which is basically the double heal is the primary in command, and then is the secondary in command. And then you have Boudica, who also has healing on her 4th skill, and this kind of empowers the March a little bit and gives him more survivability on the field. This is the 4th skill of Boudica. So that was kind of the theory behind it. But putting Boudica first, you will gain the skill tree, which is 1, so your skill rotation will be much faster. 2, you will debuff the target, which means that Artemisia will hit harder on the target. And 3, when Artemisia gets silenced for 3 seconds, rather Boudica expertise will dispel the silence or not. Boudica will benefit of that 50% all damage, and you will empower a 2300 damage factor. So there's many reasons to put Boudica first, but as I was saying, I always used Artemisia first because for the purpose of trades being tanky, more defensive, lasting longer on the battlefield, and so on. So for the next KVK, this is something that I also want to do, and I want to put Boudica first and Artemisia second. See how that will work out for me, these 2 archer marches. Now going on to the 3rd march is definitely going to be infantry. You need an infantry march as well. So the go-to march should be Guan and Scipio, which is a very good choice if you really enjoy that. Now, recently I have experienced something, and I really wanted to experience this for a very long time. I wanted to try it out because I had a feeling that it might have a better potential overall, and that is Scipio and Alex. Now, you are losing AoE damage removing Guan, because Guan has 2000 up to 3 targets, and then you have chances for additional damage. So it's like doing double damage on the targets with a 50% chance. That's pretty high. There's quite a lot of damage that Guan Yu can do, like damage output. So replacing Guan with Alex, you are losing AoE damage. But the whole point about putting Alexander as a second to your Scipio is the flat march speed. You have 30% flat march speed, which Guan Yu only has like 15%. When you go into his 3rd skill, infantry attack, march speed 15%. So that was the thing that I wanted to try out, and it really worked. On top of that, Alexander has a unique debuff and buff as well with his primary skills. There's a lot of shields. So using Scipio and Alex, that's a really great support march to have. Buffing, debuffing, mobility as well. So I have tested this march already, because as you notice, it says on the 2nd skill, infantry march speed, 15% infantry march speed, which says triggered, because you need to be outside Alliance territory. But usually when you're fighting and when you're attacking, you are outside the Alliance territory unless you are defending, which I would say that is probably the least amount of chances when you are defending. And if you are defending, you have the territorial bonuses, so it's not matter so much. But when you are outside the Alliance territory, you have 25% plus 30%, that's 55% march speed bonus that you have on your infantry. And that is not everything. You can go to the talents and you can play with your talents tree. As you notice, I already have the juicy part of the support tree. And then when you go to the infantry tree, march speed, march speed, march speed. That is 18% more march speed than a Guan and Scipio or a Guan and Alex can have. Because if you do a talent tree on Guan and you want to go for the march speed, you have to drop the feral nature, which is kinda ruining the purpose of having the skill tree. This allows your march to be super fast. So I've tested this already, as I mentioned, and my Scipio and Alex is as fast as a XY and William, when we can test this out. Right, so I got my Scipio and Alex out, which is with TF5, and I got my XY and William out, which is a total of 30% march speed. I could only put Nevsky or a Honda to increase the march speed by another 5%, But I just want to use a regular march or a normal march of calves, X, Y, and William, which I think it's pretty enough march speed, to be honest. My CPU doesn't have any gear, my XY has gear, but it doesn't make any difference because there is no march speed involved in the gear. So the whole purpose of the test is dragging and dropping on neutral territory and see if they can keep up with one another. So right now, I believe that the calves are slightly faster, although XY had to take a little bit of a turn. But it is safe to say that with the time tree that I just showed you, my Scipio and Alex is at the same speed of calves, or almost the same speed of calves. Now, if you really want your Scipio to be faster, you will probably have to put a trinket with march speed, and they will probably be faster than the calves. But for me, to be honest, it was an enough test to see that Scipio and Alex can keep up with the calves. Of course, the calves is also special units which are a little bit slower than the infantry, but I never use special units infantry because I'm always at a calves specific or archer specific when it comes to civilizations. Scipio went through my territory, which you lose the 10% march speed when you are on the territory. So I'm gonna do the test one more time, and this is only outside Alliance territory, and let's see if it will change a little bit, because it went through the Alliance territory and maybe it lost the 10% march speed even though you drag and drop outside Alliance territory. And I don't see any changes in the march speed. X, Y, and William is still a little bit faster by Scipio and Alex. So for me, that is good enough of a test to see that Scipio and Alex, it is quite a worthy march to have in your infantry arsenal because of the mobility and the march speed that they can have. But of course, the number one when it comes for the murder ball is going to be Guan and Scipio. I'm just gonna try out to see if will work a little bit better on the next KVK with Scipio and Alex, as I really like the idea, as I already tested it and I kind of enjoyed it. Now going on to the fourth march is going to be calves. On the fourth march you have options. You can go with an XY and Nevsky, which is probably the best calf march when it comes to damage output, murder ball, or wherever you want to use them. And then you can go as a fifth march, Trajan and Mulan, Trajan and Aethelflaed. Both work really good. Maybe Trajan and Honda, or who else you think that will work better with Trajan. Maybe the new leadership might just be a good replacement as well. Now, if you want to do two calf marches and you're not a big fan of Trajan, you could go with an XY and Honda. You could go with an XY and Mehmed. But preferably would be Honda, because you also have mobility, you also have more AoE with Honda. That's correct, because when you look at Honda, Honda has additional damage. Direct damage factor 200 for 2 seconds. So you're doing your primary damage, even though Honda is as a second in command and you're doing 1250, but you are also doing the extra damage. And after that you have the 4 skills, so the less troops you have, the more skill damage you do, plus you have 10% troops capacity, which also empowers a little bit XY. And then the beauty of it is the expertise, right? So if they swarm your XY while you have Honda as a second in command, you do have a little bit of defensive because of the expertise of Honda. And then when you take him out of the city again, when you refresh the march, this also refreshes, because it says here per hour after leaving your city. And then if you're doing an XY in Honda, you have your Nevsky and William, which is obviously something that you really want to have on the field. William is also amazing to have on the battlefield. And if you want to go for a 6th march, so if you want to go with this option with the first 2 archers that I mentioned, Nebu and YSG, Boudica, Artemisia, then you want to go with Guan and Scipio, obviously for the more AoE purposes. Now what I'm trying to do, Scipio and Alex. Then you want to go for an XY and Honda, and you want to go for a Nevsky and William. I mean, just think about how much AoE I have said already. It's mind-blowing when you think about it. Then you want to go for a 6th march to be a Trajan and Aethelflaed. Now I know Trajan and Aethelflaed is squishy, and if they swarm it, it will give you probably a lot of bad trades. I totally agree with that. This is kind of my bad experience with Trajan as well. But if you really want to overwhelm your opponents, that's something you shouldn't really care about if you want to win the Murder Ball. If you want to have better trades, maybe you want to go with a Trajan and Mulan, or maybe even a Trajan and Constantine as well. If I will have to expand this to a 7th March, now I know this might sound really crazy because I'm already looking at him, it would be Edward and Tomiris. Again, hospital bills should not be a problem. You should care about just overwhelming your opponents, just killing them as fast and possible. Because Edward, it takes a long time to do his primary skill, and then you can have the Tomiris debuff. Now, another option, if you're not happy with Edward, is going with Cyrus. You have plenty of options that you can do with Cyrus as well, and he has a decent AoE as well. Then you have Henry, so you could potentially do a Cyrus and Henry. So Cyrus has AoE, right? Has mobility as well, march speed, attack, and all that. Rage restoration. You have the skill tree, and then you have Henry as a second in command, which provides even more march speed, defensive options, and then a little bit of skill damage reduction, making the march be a little bit more tanky. What I'm always looking for, kind of situation. That's another option that you can go with if you have both of them. Or if you want to go for something with calves, there is very limited option because you're already having a team of AoE. So if you want to introduce a 7th March, you need to have AoE, you need to have more AoE. So if you want to go with calves, you have, like I said, very limited options. You have to do something like Chandra and Mehmed, which I don't think that's working really good, or Saladin and Mehmed, which I think that's okay. And you have to do this kind of matches that me personally, I'm not really happy about using them. If you want to go with infantry, you could potentially use something like Harald, and if you're already doing Guan and Leo, you could use a Harald and Alex. If they swarm you also have AoE, and you will have the Alex debuff as well. That's also an option if you want to do more marches, if I want to do a 7th March on the field. So quite a little options that you can do if you want to put a 7th March on the field. I really have a lot of thoughts in mind after seeing 960 fight with 1307, and I want to apply that. I want to use that in the next KVK, but of course it all depends on how well we are performing on the field, how big our murder balls are, and so on. So we'll see. A lot of tests needed to be done in the next KVK that will come, and I'm really waiting for it, to be honest. I think everybody is waiting for it. So until next time, this is your boy Geroni signing off. Peace out, yo, and take care. See you on the next one, and stay safe out there, my friends.